Welcome to Sean's Thoughts. How are you doing this evening? I'm just bundling in because it's pretty cold, I imagine, for a large part of the world right now. Excuse me while I adjust that screen so that we can see a little bit closer into the videos that I'm currently streaming in the back as part of my Do Nothing Sun series. I could definitely use some of that warmth and that sun nowadays. Actually, we don't really have it really be that cold that often. Most of the climate that we experience in the area that I live is pretty warm. It's actually putting a frigid start to my sitting down and getting comfortable and ready to talk. Yeah, so tonight's topic that I wrote on the essentially the description today to talk about was all the places that I personally wanted to travel and perhaps why I had the inclination or the desire to travel to a lot of these different places. Actually, one of them that I had, it's more so recently wanted to travel to, was the country, or you could almost say the continent of Greenland, because it's pretty large, actually. Interestingly enough, they always told us that Greenland was the frozen large area, and that Iceland, which of course had the name Iceland, was the one that was actually more inhabitable. However, you never know, probably equally inhabitable. However, I have had the inclination or the desire to travel to Greenland since I learned that Leif Erikson came from there and his sister. Now, I don't know if it's necessarily true. It's hard to tell true with what's on TV nowadays, but the newer Viking series showed that that particular person, Leif Erikson, that he came from the Greenland. Then the Vikings went over and moved or migrated over to Greenland, where they became another form of Viking, or another source of Vikings. I don't know. Anyway, so I thought it would be really cool to go over there and see what's on the top of the world. And in a sense, that area is the top of the world, more in the Arctic area. And so I'd definitely love to go and see what's up there, and see if there's any secret space bases up there or anything, and or not even if they're secret, but just to see what type of infrastructures and buildings and different projects they have going on up there. Also, just to essentially see the beauty of nature up there, because we all have this idea of what other places look like based on a lot of times when they put in fillers for what movies when they're filming on location, and for us to kind of see what other places look like. I think it's really cool to see different variations of people's culture and expression, and I'm sure there's a huge difference of expression there. What I'd like to see firsthand, there's a huge difference between seeing something in, well, online or whatever, as opposed to being there and taking that photograph. I think that there is an experience of filming or photography that happens when the artist or the person's actually doing it. So I know I could probably just go online and see all the different things and get everyone's perspective, but I would really like to go up there. And at the same time, I would like to go to the other end of the planet, Antarctica. I'd love to go see penguins and whatever, and research bases and pyramids, and get past the blockades and go past the supposed research centers, and truly see what's down there, experience it. Like, it would be amazing to have the technology, for example, to walk around comfortably in both ends of those places without having to worry about it being cold. I would love the ability to be able to control how coldness affects me. And I think that that's possibly, more than likely, one of the attributes of being able to move into New Earth. One of the messages that I got while I was going through this whole process is that I needed to acclimate myself more to the cold, and that there was some sort of perhaps healing process by breathing in cold air that I needed to take advantage of. So I think that being able to acclimate oneself to the cold perhaps makes us a little bit more durable, or I don't know, healthy anyways. So it definitely adds to the health of oneself being in that brisk cold air. And so that's maybe one of the reasons why I spend so much time outside in a sleeping bag in the freezing temperatures, because, or freezing for me anyways, is because I'm breathing in all of that cold, fresh air, and experiencing the cold, because the sleeping bag doesn't necessarily always prevent the coldness, as you know, depending on where you live in the world. Like I said, I'm definitely in the minor leagues when it comes to coldness in the world. I definitely understand that. I've been to some really cold places in the world, and this is not one of them, but we do get our fair share of cold occasionally per the year, as I was saying, and yet the last couple of days have been exceptionally cold. But I feel that that's perhaps something that's happening uniformly over the cold areas, is that we're getting more extremes when it comes to certain things, certain weather patterns and weather conditions. And that may just simply be the inability of how whoever's controlling reality to control it the way they once did. So getting back to where I would love to go is, as I was saying, I'd love to go to Antarctica and to see all there is to see. And then from there, go back to the Stonehenge. Stonehenge was a place that I visited a decade and a half back, and at that time they weren't allowing people to get too close to it, but I'd love to have the opportunity to go to the Stonehenge and then just hang out there for a while, have a nap, or put up a tent or something, and really experience being at the Stonehenge. Actually, when I was younger, I guess two decades back now will go, I was able to sleep outside the pyramids of Tikal in Guatemala, and that was an awesome experience. And actually, just to be walking amongst the pyramids, there was less, probably say, rules when I was traveling there. I'm sure that just like everywhere, the China Wall and other things too, the pyramids, there's less, I guess, access to a lot of these places as much as there used to be. But anyways, because I heard, or I saw situations, and even there was graffiti on the Stonehenge a long time ago, or from people that there wasn't as many rules, so of course they brought in the rules and restricted the people. But anyways, I had the ability in Guatemala to spend so much time in between those pyramids, and there was a lot of energy. And whether this energy is coming from what happened in the past, or perhaps in parallel timelines, what's happening in the same point in that area, was just fascinating, and the energy was awesome. So that's really what would dictate where I would want to go, going to places where the energy drew me to there. And why that's important perhaps is, the way I understand it is, when we think of densities, or we'll go with densities. When we think of densities, the way I view a higher density is that it's still there already, like it's a laid over, or it's at a level that we're not able to perceive, but it's still there. So for instance, in areas that do have that higher energy, perhaps those areas are areas where other realities coexist with that reality overlaid, or perhaps it is the organic layer which has been overlaid by the artificial layer. I guess that's a good way to look at the 3D, is that 5D is organic nature, and then 3D is layers layered over top, over layers of reality on there. Yeah, that'd be a good way to look at it, as opposed to adding something on to get to 5D. We're removing stuff to pull us up from 3D. Yeah, I guess in a sense you could say that, because as you go from 5 to 4 to 3, I've always looked at it as that as the numbers go down towards 2 and 1, is that you're getting more dense. So when we're into 4 and 5, we're less dense, and then when we get into 3 and 2, it's more solid all the way to 1D, which I don't know if that way I was explaining that as being a rock, like the reality of a rock. So anyways, I'd love to go to places where there were those higher energies, higher vibes. Like, I've never been drawn to it, but perhaps going to Sedona or Mount Shasta, those would be perhaps great places to visit. I would love to take a submarine and go underneath off the coast of Japan and see the supposed pyramids that are underneath there. Like, just imagine that there are pyramids, or supposed pyramids anyways, by what I saw on the line, of that were underneath the water, underneath the ocean, giving our whole idea of what we consider the age of our experience to be. We've often talked about, like, that what we're told in mainstream science, that the age of how long we have been on this planet may not be accurate. Well, it's not that it's off by just a little bit, it's off by a considerable amount, apparently. Considerable. You know, one of the things that I was explained, well, I'll call it, is that all this time that I've invested in learning all of this stuff was essentially, and there's a lot of other people just like me that have spent the time learning, and we have spent the time listening, for instance, to the GIA reports and from other sources of information as well, and we've compiled them and put them together. But there are a lot of people that are like me that have done that, and you can kind of say that they have all been the front runners, the people to bring that information into the collective, or anchor that information or those concepts and ideas into the collective, so that it does, more like the 100th monkey effect, have the ability to ripple stronger into the rest of the collective. So I think that that's one great benefit that the collective overall is going to have, is that we will, or everyone else will together, we'll be able to ripple that energy of that knowledge of what we have spent all this time to learn and discern through, and essentially put together the pieces of what and why all of reality happened as it did. And I guess, I'm kind of leaving out a lot of what I'm referring to or talking about, simply because a lot of what I receive as information of what's happening in the world comes from something called the Global Intelligence Agency report. And this report is given on a frequent basis from a wonderful woman named Kim, and she explains what's happening and relates it to how, what we see in mainstream media, how that relates to what's actually happening in regards to the evolution, you could say, of our society, of our species, and of our planet, and all this stuff. Because it's very easy to look out the window and see that things are not normal, and they're never going to go back to being normal, because in the state of now, I see things as constantly changing, and constantly changing, always being in the moment of now, being a natural place to, sit within. And in order to do that, we have to step away from security and routines and, what are we doing next year, next day, next month, like planning all those moments of everything that we think needs to get done, that we have to step away from that and, yeah, be more spontaneous. And I've talked about that again. So that leads me into all this ideas of these places that I want to go. And I see more of the world trending towards this, to do this in a nomadic effect, meaning that going from place to place and not necessarily having to stay in one place for a long period of time, and to have the experience of just moving. I had the fortune of actually experiencing this when I was traveling in China and Japan, that I was able, and in Mexico as well, and that I was able to go from one city to another town, to another space, and just keep moving forward and keep adventuring forward. And that's kind of like how Ash does it on that show called Pokemon. Ash is on a mission and he's with a group of friends, and there's a brother and a sister as well. And they're on a mission to just essentially experience lives, train Pokemon, which is basically building friendships and then building relationships overall. And I think that that type of lifestyle for many people out there would be something that we can definitely work towards achieving. And that's, I think I've spoken about this before, that's where things like the new style of a farmer's market, where people could just drop by and sell goods, we would essentially live on a more even playing field. So therefore, we wouldn't have to worry about rules and regulations as much. I do believe in the core of all of us that most people want to work with one another. And you can often see that in just lining up. When you go to places, you don't see too many people. It's mostly you see them in the movies where they budge in line, but yet I find that most people that I observe, they do want to take their place in line, like in taking their turn essentially. So that's a good reflection on society overall, that you take away all of these influences that push us to the edge of getting frustrated or impatient, and you allow people to calm down, and there's going to be a lot less controversy between people overall. And like I said, I think it's an awesome when people actually allow others to get in front. Or I've had a couple times where I've had people, when I'm standing in line and I have one or two things, and they offer me to get in front because I don't have very much. And so that's a great reflection on society overall, that I think that we definitely are able and quite willing to look at the world that's coming to us, and perhaps choose better ways of doing things. And like I said, one of those ways I believe will be a nomadic lifestyle. People will be able to move across the planet. There won't be the restrictions and borders, and you got to stay in this country and you got to stay all that. And there's not really well, they would probably approach with fear about that, about letting borders go, worrying about too many people in one place over the other. Well, you could still have each area deciding how much population they want to have within their borders. That seems reasonable. That's keeping balance of the number of people that are walking on that particular part of Earth. You could definitely still do that. However, I do feel there's a lot more balance that's going to be when people perhaps want to go back to their native countries, or they want to go to a country they've never been to, because as I've mentioned before, there's a lot more land on this planet than there are people, and that we could all easily have enough space to comfortably live in tune and a harmony with nature, and be spread out. And of course, if we look into the information that we're hearing from Kim, we would see that where we're going is towards a space where we have a lot more impact and effect and co-creative attributes to the world around us overall. And so therefore, we are definitely going to be working with nature more in harmony, and we can spread ourselves out a little more, is what I'm saying. No more big cities. And yet, at the same time, I would love to travel around and see how people are transitioning as well. share it, I guess, when it is called upon me to share. But nonetheless, I would love to be able to watch this world change. See, that's, I guess, one of the benefits of going through those first layers of awakening. Sarah, I forgot her last name, but she says there's like six waves, and being on the initial waves is definitely a lot more challenging than being on the waves that are about to essentially get a big boost, because there are a lot of things that are happening in our world that are already in occurrence. So some people waking up, they may see a whole bunch of different things happening at once and things like that. And, that's where our training of compassion comes in, knowing that these other people who are just waking up, who are going to go through those initial cycles of that waking up. And for me, one of those initial cycles of waking up was focusing my intention on all of the things that were happening, like wanting justice for what had supposedly happened, and wanting things paid back, and seeing people, pay for what they had done, and confronting and such. But I learned that spending all that time and my focus, my attention on that, it's like a lighthouse shining on that area, because they're trying to, focus attention, focus light on that area. And yet, well, essentially, when we do that, we're help keep that situation in existence. Like we continue to use the observer effect to create that situation and continue its ability to exist. And yet when people don't focus their attention on something, what happens? Well, the series gets canceled. It's over. No more. And sometimes you'll get an opportunity to have that series somewhat concluded, like Sopranos or Game of Thrones. They'll get that ending. And then there's other times where when the attention just isn't there anymore, it just gets canceled, like sometimes mid-season. If you follow along with a lot of the TV shows that used to work on the Prime networks, if they didn't receive the attention that they expected to have from that particular series, or from any series, then it would essentially get canceled. And that's how I see that lighthouse being, is if we don't focus, and we simply focus on things like, where do I want to go in the future, and why do I want to go there? Like, I could probably just continue talking about where I want to go, and yet that's because there's so many places out there. What I saw when I was traveling, backpacking, in fact, across Asia and Mexico, was there are so many different spaces and essentially experiences out there for us to see and do. And I would definitely love to be on a nomadic mission to perhaps even share not just what I see with other people, but I'd like to just simply share how I see it with the people that I'll eventually come across. Today I was in Starbucks, and normally I used to do a lot of reading when I was there. I actually read the first, I think there's 12 books, so I think I read the 11 books, but I've read, with the exception of one book, I've read all of the Paul Selig's channeled texts out loud in Starbucks over the course of the last 2 years. And I essentially just read it to myself, but I read it out loud long enough that most people could hear me. And I would just listen to my own meditation music while I did it. And I don't even know why I'm telling that story. Yeah, I don't know why I'm telling that story. There was probably a segue into something else. There was just me tooting my own horn about how I read that book in Starbucks. Oh, anyways, I think I was just talking about Starbucks. Yes, that's what it was. It was about what I did today. So I was in Starbucks, and normally I would read, and then I went off into that long story, but reel myself back into what I'm talking about. And today what I was doing is I was thinking. often I would also watch videos and comment back and such, but today I was just sitting there thinking and thinking for quite a long time. So I decided to just record, propping my camera against my coffee and just record a chair that was sitting in front of me. And it's a chair that I have sat in an awful lot and did a lot of my work, well, guess we'll say it, a lot of my thinking and such. I've sat in that exact chair. I've sat in all four of these chairs, in fact. And yet today I just decided to record it and just to allow whatever happened behind it if someone walked into frame and, you know, and after that 15 minutes was over, I brought that footage home and I compressed it down into 3 minutes. And it was remarkable to, first of all, do that, to compress that time, like to watch people, what they do, not in real time, but in a faster time. And, you know, that's a really good example, perhaps, of when we talk about 4 and 5D, is that those higher speeds moving is kind of like that's the frequency or the visual representation of what that 4 and 5D, it's moving faster. I think that that's a good way to visualize it. I've often talked about a car and driving, speeding by someone standing by the side of the road is a good way, but nonetheless. Anyways, so I created a video of that and I really enjoyed myself after making it, watching it several times, because it was really interesting just to sit there and see the world move at a faster speed. And maybe that's, as I said, a good visual representation for how perhaps we could eventually see the world to move at a faster vibration. In fact, I personally feel that time is speeding by considerably faster than it has in the past. The days and weeks, and actually Carrie Kay talked about in one of or two of her videos about how what we would normally experience in these full years or these 10 months, we're actually going to start feeling and experiencing essentially energetically within smaller packets of contained time, is the way I looked at it. So meaning that when we would normally have experienced 12 months, in 12 months, that things are speeding up to the point that eventually we'll experience like 2-3 months within, or sorry, a year within the factor of 4 or 5 months, and maybe even faster. Now, how that translates, perhaps it's everyone's different. Time, in a sense, is relative to the person that's perceiving it. That's why people are able to lose track of time and such. So, yeah, me traveling around the world, there are so many places on this planet, so many perhaps underground, as I mentioned, places to go to, or underwater cities. And there's actually a show, and I started talking about it the other night before I went off track, called, it's not a show, it's a game, it's called BioShock. And BioShock tells this world of a highly advanced technological world, and they have their scientists work with different types of sciences in essentially altering the human body, and, you know, being able to shoot electricity and all these other attributes that they essentially program into the human. And the actual, you know, technological artistry, like how it looks quite 1920s, 1930s artistry, like how the world we perceive it looks, but yet it's still at the same time highly technological. Anyways, it's a really impressively designed game when it came to the art and, well, the overall gameplay and the creativity. They have 3 different versions, or there's part 1, part 2, and part 3, and part 1 and 3 were completely similar yet very different games. Yet why I bring this up is because this feels to me like it's more of a memory of a place as opposed to, well, just creating it. It was really well done and very well detailed. The whole aspect and story game. I mean, sort of the narrative of the story. And it really makes me feel that this place does exist, as well as there's lots of other places that we've heard as stories. And the most recent, you could say, was the Tartaria Empire. And it's possibly even all around us as we sit. And yet there's other places like Avalon and Lemuria and Mu and Atlantis and different areas where perhaps if the overlays on our planet were different, maybe we would be able to see a lot more of this stuff. And as we rose our vibration, meaning that we healed, that we did the inner work, that we were not as low vibrational, that perhaps these places that are all around us now, and maybe even beings too, could then be able to be seen by us, perceived by us. And I think that that would open up a lot more possibilities. As you know, I'm always dreaming and looking and desiring different possibilities, different ways to do things, different, I don't know. I really, really would love to see a world that's so drastically different than the one that we are enslaved in nowadays. And there would be a lot of people that would argue that we're not, that we're free, that we have unlimited possibilities, and we've got all these people that are going to tell us how to do things their way because, you know, they did it, and so they're going to get everyone else to do it their way and such like that, and tell us that the sky is the limit, when that's not what is being shown in the world around me. And, you know, me just focusing on myself, that would be great, but I think for us to truly be united, I think that truth does have to prevail. But in order to find truth, I think that we all have ourselves and what we can change about ourselves. I think that somewhere along the lines, a lot of people got convinced that, you know, we are all perfect the way we are and we can just keep doing the way we're doing. Well, you know, there's a saying, if you keep doing what you're doing, you're going to keep getting what you've got. And so it's that idea of what are we willing to change to get what we would prefer. Like I use the word exactly right there, is prefer as opposed to want, because prefer leaves us open to also God coming in, stepping in and giving us what he knows we want. And so sometimes what is best for us isn't always what we go after. We perhaps go after what we think we want, and or perhaps it's not even what we think we want. It's just we're being convinced that the little voice inside of our head is actually us talking. And see, that's where discernment comes in. It's being able to determine when we receive instruction or we receive guidance, that we or we're able to discern, tell between which is for our benefit and for our detriment. And that's a really, really great skill to work on. I think, or think, I realize one of the things that my channel may bring is I'll have the meditation stuff and such. However, I also realize I have a lot of things to share of experiences that I went through. And that's where I was going before about, you know, there's a lot of other people that are like me that have had similar experiences, and we've had crazy obstacles, and, you know, that it's been an endurance race to get to where we are. And the reason why we're here at this point together, you and me, is because we are sharing information from one another and from energy from one another. There's a transference of energy. And the energy is transferring from me is that I've had many different experiences. And these experiences have given me insight in which a lot of people are going to go, that there are stages through the whole process of awakening, that none of us simply went from A to Z. There was a lot of different spaces in between. And I started talking about this last night and I tangented off again. And that we have to take all of those stages. However, some of us can definitely help. I'm just going to put that on again. Some of us can definitely help others, maybe not skip, but alleviate the need to do a lot of these other layers. And in a sense, there's a possibility that many people who are just waking up now will be able to skip this, not just because of us, but perhaps they've already in a past lifetime or a past timeline or a past whatever done a lot of this work. And so I can definitely foresee a drastic change in society happening within this year. Within this year, there being a drastic change in how overall society, I'm not saying that society over entirely in its entirety would change, but that there would be a drastic visible enough. And, I would definitely agree that it's about time. It's about time that something happens like that. Actually, I don't know why this just keeps going off. As I was saying, it's definitely about time. It almost feels like for me that we've been sitting at the night before Christmas for quite a long time. Quite a long time. It was almost time. It's definitely for those who have been sleeping, it could be perceived as a luxury. I guess it could be perceived either way, right? Everyone has their own experience of how they arrived at this particular time, but yeah. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of places to go, and I look forward to experiencing the process of traveling there. Some of the places that I would love to go are off planet. I believe there's a whole experience off of our planet, but we'll leave that one for later. I would love to go to Egypt. As I've mentioned, I believe that there's spaces underneath the Sphinx, and in fact, they found some sort of art structures underneath the Giza pyramid. And I would love to go all over Denmark, and definitely love to go to several different locations in Mexico and go see the pyramids wherever they are. Actually, that was another real cool place, the terracotta soldiers that I went to when I was in China. Amazing energy within that stonework as well. And yeah, just continue to explore and uncover, and just kind of like the exploration of like a Tomb Raider, except for I have no intentions to raid. I just want to see and experience, and if it's safe enough, tent it out for a night just to have that experience of waking up at these miraculous and energetic locations. Go inside some pyramids or mountains and see how far down, how many floors I can go down in these different bases that are all over the place. I'd love to be able to go see all these different structures that were used by those who did control our planet that hid it all from us. See, one of the things that I'm aware of, or I've come to the understanding of, is there is a library or a vault of information underneath the Sphinx that will be ready for our, not consumption, but access to when we are ready as a species. So I look forward to that. See, I have so many different ideas of what our future is going to look like, because I understand, or I've come to the realization that time isn't the way that we think about it. And with that being said, the construct of aging is something that we play a part in co-creating, and we do that along with the doctors who tell us how long we have, and we believe that white lab coat and such like that, and that therefore we help participate in the effects of our aging, and we watch what we see on TV. And perhaps that's the reason why people used to live a lot longer and healthier, is they weren't being affected by what they were seeing on a screen as much. And yet I'm trying at this point in time to turn that frown upside down and use the screen to bring in these beautiful images like the one that you're sitting here watching. This is one of my favorite sun reflections. I just love the Morse code almost like effect of that flickering in the one sun, and even those little flies that are being reflected or affected by the sun on the top right. Like it's just such a beautiful area to just sit. And of course, if you're in an office tower somewhere in some country, Malaysia or Bangladesh or India or America or wherever you are, and you don't have access to get out and see nature, well, I went out there for you and I brought this back, and it's authentic. All of the actual 3 minute videos, or majority of them that showcase nature, with the exceptions of the ones that have a slight AI edit, and those are usually the 13-second clips. But the rest of them are all genuine photograph with my phone, with me sitting there, and a lot of times I'm doing exactly that. I'm doing nothing. I totally value the benefit of slowing down and seeing how meditation is. And you can actually get that meditative experience by having, like, for instance, a bath, using some Epsom salts and some essential oils, and essentially pampering yourself, but more importantly, slowing down, calming down. The essential oils and the Epsom salts are really good for relaxing, especially the Epsom salts, the magnesium in there. And finding a non-burning oil. Be aware some of the essential oils, they do burn when they go in. Half of them, I would say, they're hot oils. So find something that you are, comfortable with, that's not hot, and using that, especially using that as opposed to a perfume. You'll find that a lot of the Epsom salts, they're if they're in the store, they use perfumes, and, well, just think of the word fumes, and yeah, that's not a good thing to be in the bath breathing all of that perfume in there. So finding either these small companies that do it with essential oils, or just getting your own essential oil and mixing it with the actual magnesium flakes or whatever the Epsom salts are made out of. So that's a whole bunch of everything all packed up from going all across this planet for all the different reasons, and coming all the way back for a beautiful warm bath and looking after yourself. And that's definitely something that I'd often be doing, and I often have. Even when I have been traveling, when I traveled across Canada, I would stop and pick up some Epsom salts and jump into a motel or a hotel bath, and have that same cleansing experience. Because one of the things I forgot to mention is the Epsom salt baths are a great way for detaching your energy from the world around you, and, like, you can even call your energy back when you're in there, but it's a good way from essentially cleansing your field. Salt has some amazing effects to help with that, and magnesium salt and the magnesium itself for calming and reducing the stress and such. Because, as I've mentioned before, they like to control us, and they like to control us if they can keep us in a state of chaos, of stress, of go, 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 go. So when they're constantly getting people to work out more and more and more when they don't even need to work out anymore, when they're already fit like a fiddle, that's just a great example of the matrix trying to keep that person on a treadwheel, keep having to move forward. And that has caused for an awful lot of people in this world medical issues, is that making you think that you need to keep doing, when sometimes the most important thing that we can do is do nothing. Get in that bath, rest, relax, and start to ponder and wonder about what the world could be like based on our preferences. Spend more of our attention and our energy, and we focus that lighthouse on those areas that we want to explore, that we want to see thrive, as opposed to focusing our energy on all the propaganda and the low vibrational music and the pain and the news, and getting essentially their realities to be created using our attention. So if we can just divert that attention, perhaps we can help Kim and the Global Intelligence Agency, help them just by removing our attention from their ability to use that energy and call it back. So I appreciate so much of your attention and that you've shared it with me. And I really, really, really enjoy making these 3-minute do nothing short videos. I love sitting in nature and seeing all these different camera angles. I hope you will join with me and share your attention on the one that I created, not just the one that I created today at the Starbucks Cafe, yet that, of course, that one as well. If you could watch it 5 times, that would be awesome. They're able to be counted, it seems, on YouTube 5 times, and if you watch it more than that, then they stop counting it. But the attention spent on the new one of a viewing tower on Pitt Lake in beautiful British Columbia. I stood there and filmed myself doing exactly that, nothing, for the whole 3 minutes, and had people walk by, and it was actually a wonderful viewing location as well that is decommissioned and out of service, but I definitely enjoyed it, and I definitely took the time to put up the video of me doing that, and I loved it because I was adding a different element. There was a person who walked by and I kept it in the film on normal speed. I'm definitely finding a lot of these different elements that I can play with, including time in my most recent one at Starbucks, but also having people and filming of myself. And I would love, love, love to turn this artwork, because I'm coming to see it as artwork. My confidence is building, which is awesome. And I think that that's important in absolutely everything we do, that as we move closer to New Earth, it's going to be about raising our confidence and our self-esteem and our ability to do, but also our ability to lead ourselves and each other. There is a new Star Trek called Starfleet Academy, and it has some phenomenal messaging in it. And one of the messages is individuals who have struggled in the past coming together to learn teamwork and feel like they're fitting in. And so, yeah, I kind of feel that it goes in line with that. But nonetheless, I really enjoy making these videos, and I definitely would love to manifest, and I'm putting it out there into the universe. If God shall receive it, I would love to make these videos as more of a source of how I live and why I wake up, and I was already doing them. I love just thinking about the different locations, but should I get out on that road and start that nomadic lifestyle with my son and take these videos from all the corners of the world and share and make them longer, and big thoughts going through my head right now. Oh, I loved making this video too. It's a video of me singing Dermot Kennedy's Red Stars in the Red Sky, or I can't get the title off my head, but anyways, I really enjoyed just walking around in the forest this day with this beautiful sun and just singing this song, belting it out into the woods, and no one was around, at least not that I could see. I'm sure there was a lot of people hearing me because I was quite loud. Yeah, I really do see or foresee that as our voices become stronger, because they definitely do matter, that we will start, more of us, living the life that we would prefer to live. So thank you so much for sharing this beautiful amount of time with me. That one on as I exit. Thank you for sharing this time with yourself, because one of the things that I really do believe is that everything is for a reason. Everything is part of a larger plan, and even if it's not a larger plan that we can fully understand in that moment, because if we're in the plan, it's hard to see from above, that we trust that things are happening for a reason. And essentially, if you've gotten this far, then I guess we have a path that we're going to be traveling together, and perhaps not, who knows? But it's more than likely we are, because when people are in each other's fields, when they do run into each other, as we so call it, that it's not always an accident, but it also, at the same time, it always doesn't mean that it's supposed to be like every woman a man runs into is the woman he's supposed to be with. Like, there are other reasons why people run into each other. But if we have run in, if we've gotten to this area, then more than likely many of us are going to be doing something collectively and anchoring all of that know-how that we went through the last few years. Well, that's definitely going to benefit the collective when we can stand up and, you know, say what we've experienced, and perhaps save other people from having to redirect their attention in all those negative ways. And what I mean by that is, well, getting angry and hostile and violent and disruptive, and when that's essentially what is being intended by creating all of that separation. So by listening to things like this, we can perhaps avoid having to go through that as a collective overall, and we can essentially bring harmony into our planet and move and transition into that more beautiful world that would be preferable by all those people that are standing in line right now. All those people that, you know, we want to make sure we all stand in line and we go up when it's our turn. We're kind of like that. And so, yeah, we can trust that what's going to happen, if we put love behind every action and we work to overcome all challenges to the best of our ability, I think that we're going to get to a place that's going to be miraculous. And as I've said before, miracles don't happen, we create them. We co-create them together with God. So have a wonderful sleep, and I definitely will be creating a lot more small meditative videos, and I encourage you to watch all of them. To me, they're all artwork. To me, they're all experiences. And yeah, I guess some of the older ones maybe don't worry about, but definitely the more recent ones, and the first two definitely. All right, have a wonderful sleep, and I will talk to you soon. Love you so much.